welcome to Rollwise, the show where we talk about all things tabletop role playing. If you like what we talk about in our conversations and you want to hear about us more, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit those alert notifications or whatever have you, and comment so that we can help the YouTube algorithm as much as possible.
Or just comment
Um,
so we can talk about it.
yeah, and we like talking with folks, so do that too. Uh,
Algorithmically aside, we
algorithmically
like to hear
aside,
from you guys. So
I was
yeah.
on another channel this week, and half the comments just said algorithm.
Out pray to the
algorithm sounds like a future character name to me.
cyberpunk. Um, there you go. Yeah, so let us know your thoughts, especially if you happen to join any of our live streams and you have comments about how we play or stuff you'd like to see us play through. That'd be or our thoughts. We're interested in. Jeez, we're interested in hearing from you. So the first thing I thought we would talk about this week was kind of interesting because those of you that remember from about the middle of last year, Roll20 made an announcement that they acquired Demiplane. And Demiplane was something that I think our first, at least my first experience with it was when we got into the Cosmere, like starter set and everything like that they had
Yeah,
released as part of the Kickstarter. But it sounds like Demiplane and Roll20 are trying to marry or couple the two platforms as much as possible. And they recently announced that they have basically a beta, a public beta that is live that allows people to kind of go in and test out some of these new features. What do you guys remember when we used the Demiplane for Cosmere, and like how did that go in your guys' opinion? What did you like? What did you think was missing?
I mean, it was just character stuff. Like it presented the
Mhm.
character information fine. Like that's really what we used it for. We didn't use it for to play the game or anything. Apparently it's the character. I think it's the character formatting stuff that they wanted when Roll20 bought it. It sounds like from the little article that we read. So yeah, that worked great. You could I don't did we walk through character creation? We did walk through character creation.
Yeah,
That was
we went
pretty
through
easy.
character.
Yeah,
It was pretty easy. The information was all there. Because I think wasn't Daggerheart also on Demiplane?
It
yes, I
was,
think so.
yeah.
Yeah, Daggerheart and
Yeah.
Cosmere were both on, and yeah, they present the NPC, the pre-gen characters really well. All the information was easy to find,
Mhm.
and then character creation it walked you through everything fairly well. So
Yeah. And Jeff, what about you? How did you? And I guess so.
I
Correction: Daggerheart was our first game that we attempted to look at Demiplane for.
oh, was it the first? Okay, I didn't remember which
Yeah.
was first. So
yeah, I the character creation stuff, which is what we did the most of, worked great. I thought they made it really easy, and if that's something that Roll20 thought that they were missing, Demiplanes was probably one of the better systems that I'd seen. Places supporting multiple systems
Hmm.
for easy character creation.
and it was visually really nice. It was
Yeah,
really
Yeah.
a
I
nice
I
feature.
yeah.
think
Roll20 sometimes is a little sparse feeling. I know they've added a lot to it, but their interface still feels kind of basic to me.
Well, the last time we tried character stuff on Roll20, it didn't work. So hopefully
yeah.
this fixes that stuff.
I think you can't necessarily blame Roll20 for that. Roll20 was like, okay, well, upload your character sheet and go to town, and the publisher who had done that uploaded a character sheet but didn't update it or anything. So all you really had was access to old archivable information. I think Demiplane was a great acquisition for Roll20 because I feel like the character sheets and everything like that in Roll20 were rather basic, and I don't necessarily think is intuitive. But what they said they can do now that you're part of this public beta today is that you can link your Demiplane characters to new or existing Roll20 campaigns. Win. You can use content you've unlocked on either Roll20 or Demiplane through cross-platform sync. And so what that's saying is that if you purchased it on one platform, you don't have to purchase it on on the other platform. And they said something about eligible purchases. I don't know if that means that there's some stuff that because of how the
The
legalese behind
licensing
how
works.
yeah, kind of like how Alchemy had that really cool what did they have? They had that really cool promotion for all the PDFs as part of a bundle.
I know it was wrong. I was wrong. Like
And
it
it
wasn't
was
what they
like,
were.
yeah, they were like, you don't really have the rights to do that. So it was a little bit of a hiccup for them. But then, of course, Roll20 subscribers. I believe there's a tier that you get subscription perks, and apparently, Roll20 subscribers enjoy demi-plane subscription perks, including content sharing with up to 24 people and unlimited character creation. And it has things like Alien RPG, Candela Obscura, Cyberpunk Red, Marvel multi-use of Marvel Multiverse role-playing game, Pathfinder 2A, and Vampire the Masquerade 5e. So it's got at least it's a good start. And they say it's a beta, so they say it's like, don't take this as the final product.
Yeah.
But here's something interesting with D&D Sigil being like, I don't know, up in flames. I think there's really an opportunity for Roll20 to take its already commanding lead and kind of go a little farther. Would you say Roll20 is the biggest of them all, or would you say that it's still fierce competition between it and Foundry and some of the other ones?
I don't know. I haven't even looked. I think it's the one I've heard that I hear of the most. Roll20. It seems to be the one most people use, but that might just be because it's the oldest. I think it was one of the first real VTTs.
Yeah, it was one of the first. I think I'm hearing about Foundry more and more, but
Mhm.
maybe some of the people that I'm watching are different than some of the people that Brent are watching. Like I'm sure they're both very large in the
Mhm.
VTT space. Roll20 may be bigger. Honestly, I don't know if there's stats
Yeah,
on that kind of stuff, but
I
I've been
think
hearing a
it's
lot more
just
about Foundry because they've
I.
embraced some of the newer technology a little bit
eh,
faster. It feels like.
That's what I was gonna say. Is Roll20 still feels a bit um like it's very like the interface isn't simple. That's not what I mean, but it looks very basic. And I
Mhm.
think it's being overshadowed a little by some of the fancier VTTs that are
Yeah.
visually more impressive.
Yeah, and it's hard. I think at least without knowing numbers, and that would include subscriber numbers. Whatever it is, like the how many users are playing on each platform day to day. Does sound like Foundry and Roll20 are up there. So there's obviously some other ones that are probably in that space, but I don't know. This could give them a pretty good edge if they add some nice stuff from Demiplane and make that a better experience. Now, how that plays, don't know. I just thought it was an interesting announcement to talk about because, I mean, it is for people that like virtual tabletops, it's nice when you kind of reduce barriers, you make it more visually appealing, and kind of like alchemy. I really love the alchemy VTT approach. I just have struggled with actually implementing it because it feels harder than some of the other more user friendly ones. Like, so,
Well, I think any VTT adds a lot of work for the GM,
yeah,
much more than
that's
people think. I think.
it's true. It's true. It's true. So today we're going to be hopping into Castles and Crusades, and we just went through a little bit of a playthrough, a short adventure. The adventure was something I just kind of homebrewed to get an idea as to how the game played. So if you guys are interested to catch the homebrew adventure from start to finish, we have 3 episodes and a small playlist. I can link that somewhere at some point that you can go click that. Or if you want to see the other games, we have other playlists that we've created for other games that we've given a try. So, but the general idea of the adventure was just to, kind of play a fun little game. Since this is, since Castles and Crusades, I think if you look at what it's trying to be, it's really trying to be it's kind of have that old school vibe with, um, it's trying to blend old school Dungeons and Dragons feel with kind of more modern and very streamlined mechanics, so you don't get lost in the THACO or anything along those lines. But it still seems like it's robust enough in terms of rule sets and everything like that that you still feel a little bit of that crunch.
Yeah,
Um,
it's trying to mix like an OSR style feel with the fifth edition
mhm.
feel, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, its mechanics are fairly streamlined. It seems like it's fairly fast, fast and flexible. Apparently, I can't talk tonight, so you just expect me to just be tripping over myself.
Flast, that's a new word from us to you. Uh, uh,
Flast.
enjoy
Um,
using it.
yeah, and what I mean, but it's definitely in that it's familiar because one person plays as the keeper, the game master, the other people play as players. they roll up characters using an insanely simple, character creation process that gives you a fairly workable character that's not like just, a story point. It has some actual mechanics behind it and everything along those lines. And we'll talk about mechanics in a minute, but character creation, what did you guys like about that? And tell us about the characters you were able to create.
It was quick. I enjoyed it because it was quick. It wasn't like, even though it's similar to other D20 games, like in comparison to when we made characters for fourth edition,
Hmm.
it was a lot faster than that, which I appreciated quite a bit. Fourth edition seemed to take forever. This is who you are. This is what you get. There's your character.
Hmm.
Sprinkle in details
Yeah.
as desired.
And Jeff, what about you?
Um, I thought it was I thought it was quick, which was nice until we got to the how much equipment do you want? And then it's, absolutely everything listed out by price, which is for me not super fun. It feels, I mean, that makes it feel a little more OSR-y, so that you can have the exact stuff that you want, but
Hmm.
I sure, I guess. I don't care for that part, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I don't really like the old school D&D shopping list stuff, which this did suffer from. You're right.
Yeah.
I didn't mind like the stat rolling, but I did roll a 4, and then four is not a dump stat. 4 is a avoid this at all cost stat, and that's fine. I just, when you're trying to try out a system, you know what I mean.
Hmm.
I think that's something that if I were to run Castle and Crusades, I would not do that to a party. I would come up with another way to do that.
No, I know, but but it's still, like when you've got a game with an OSR feel, there's a lot of OSR players that are 3d6 straight down the line. At least we could decide where to put stuff.
Yeah, but I think a lot of time those people don't play a four stat full on like a four stat is either.
No, that's true.
Like playing a four intelligence is is acting. It's
Yeah,
drama
no, I almost went with
class.
a 4 intelligence. I had a 4 charisma at the no, a 2 charisma because I had a racial adjustment.
Yeah. It basically meant that stat wasn't going to be your strongest suit no matter what.
No,
Um,
and you asked us what we created. I
yeah.
was a half orc monk who didn't socialize well at all with my 2 charisma.
Yeah, and I was a uh, dwarf rogue. I was trying to come up with another adjective. Headstrong. He wasn't super bright either. I had 2 8s in intelligence and wisdom, so
Mhm.
we were very average, if not below average, type characters.
Yeah.
Um, which was, we did well enough.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a good enough reason to talk a little bit about the game and the mechanics themselves. So just so everyone's aware of like what edition we played Castles and Crusade. I had purchased the 10th printing of the book. Now, there just a couple things about that is that there are, since there are 10 printings, it's kind of curious to see like what's mostly changed over those 10 printings. And from what I've understood, and I'm not really a Troll Lord Games follower in the strictest sense, but we were turned on to this game by one of the people that one of the people that watches the channel. They recommended it's one of their favorite RPGs. And I can see why. And it's been around for 20 plus years or something like that. And its 10th printing was less a lot of rules changes and everything like that. But if what I researched, it was basically two things. It was they wanted to get the open game license language out of the game and everything like that, mostly because of the D&D debacle some time ago that caused a lot of these other companies to kind of remove that type of language because they didn't want to be at risk for wizards doing nasty things to them. But it also was a lot of like editing changes. And and I didn't know this, but it seems as though the Castles and Crusades has been kind of it was a passion project by people that didn't necessarily have the best editors. throughout the different editions. And so that was always kind of the comments that people, as they read it, struggled because editing was inconsistent, and it was plagued with various little weird problems here and there about how it was written and all that kind of stuff. But this one supposedly had an editor, and as I was reading it, I didn't really feel like it had the same problems. So maybe they got a lot of those little tiny misprints out of this edition, kind of squashed those bugs once and for all. But it's also my understanding is if you want to go backwards, you can use any edition of the book and play. It's just that edition may have
Typos.
and other
Mistakes.
little things. And something else I didn't know is that if you want to, you can actually go to the Trollord website, and if you're looking at just their PDF stuff, you can actually get their 7th printing of the book for free PDF. So if you want to try it, you can basically get cut your teeth on the game before going out and buying the 10th printing of the book.
Yeah, the rules are simple, so I can't see them changing very much.
Well, I was just kind of curious, because since it was Reforged to me seems like probably a lot more being done to the game between printings.
I don't know, eliminating.
Or they wanted it to sound like that so that you would buy that after you just bought the 9th.
I consider eliminating spelling errors and grammar corrections. I don't know. That seems to be like hammering the dings out to me pretty badly.
That's true. But yeah, so I mean so just so everybody's aware of what one we played. So I think that the other thing to really talk about is so what is the main mechanic behind this? So just so people are aware, this is a D20 system, the D20 process that they use, and I call it the siege engine.
D20 rollover system. It's a rollover.
Yep, D20
target number.
I mean, I'm sure there's some situations where a team may ask for a low number, but that's not mechanically how the skill checks.
That's not that's the basic mechanic is rollover.
Yeah, so they call it the siege engine because it they in their mind it's about conflict and going back and forth and all that kind of stuff. But it's D20, add your level and add a relevant modifier. What makes it kind of different than D&D and everything like that, and I would say both simpler and a little more complicated, is that each character is given a certain number of attributes that become their prime attributes. And each class has an attribute that's usually their best prime attribute. And what that does is if something that's considered your prime attribute, whether that be strength, dexterity, charisma, or any of the other D&D type stats that you're familiar with, that roll requires a 12 or higher to succeed, modified by a difficulty number that the keeper provides. If it's a non-attribute check, then that is an 18 or higher to succeed, plus whatever the difficulty number is. So right out of the gate, this presents both an interesting concept and a kind of a weird problem to me. And so what do you guys, and so you guys really were the ones playing with it. How did you feel like you took to it? Did it make sense? Did it seem kind of odd?
I don't know if it felt odd. Two things. It felt like the game really wants you to have parties that provide coverage for virtually everything, so that you've got somebody that can try to roll that with a lower target. And two, man, it felt like I was not going to actually hit the target if I couldn't come up with a reason why I should use one of my prime attributes. And like every race except for human had wound up with 2 out of 6. And humans wound up with 3 out of 6, but neither one of us were humans. I mean, you still roll, you still try, and maybe we did hit some, but
we did fairly well.
I know I cringed when you were like, "Okay, we're gonna do a strength test," and I'm like, "Great."
Yeah, neither of us are strength characters.
Yeah, it was Dex and Con.
I agree with you. I think that was the one thing that I think the game, which is always a problem for me in games, it definitely feels like it's a game that benefits having more players because you can get that coverage of it's not just class coverage, it's just skill coverage. Like, oh, we need a strong guy to open things, or we need, and not having that guy, we definitely felt that in some instances. And so I feel like, either a full party of 4 or a party of 3 is probably more comfortable for this sort of game. Because of the way that or just being humans, both people being humans. because you could cover if you did a session 0 where you talked a lot, you could cover all 6 stats that way because they both get 3, right? So a pair of humans, like a buddy cop movie with pair of humans would be good in this system because you cover all the skills.
It did give me the feel though that I needed to stay in my lane.
Mhm.
Yeah,
it does have
like the things that I was good at, but the things I was bad at, I was 50% worse off the bat, and more if your target was, even higher than that.
Yeah, worse than a coin flip. Yeah. Yeah, which is it's kind of cool because there were times where we rolled for stuff that we succeeded and we probably shouldn't have by any means, like the stealth rolls that we did fairly well on every time we rolled stealth. But I don't know. I liked it. I don't like you requiring more people just to make sure everything's covered. But I think you could probably do that with a little bit of creative design as the GM. And I think once you got used to, like, the one thing that kept confusing me that you'll hear about in the playthrough is adding your skill and your skill modifier and level and still getting the lower target number. Like that much benefit seemed hard for me to get over at first, because of your your +3 and you're such a lower target number. They definitely want you to succeed at what you're good at. Like they want you, and if you don't succeed, it's because you rolled really bad. Like so.
Sometimes the rolls, like I don't think we rolled particularly well as a group.
But the things we were good at, we did well.
There were moments.
You punchified really good. So, and
everything else pretty meh.
And I snuck around pretty good. So we did what we were supposed to. I think it's an interesting mechanic.
It is.
I think it takes some getting used to.
It's not bad. It's just it's different.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to.
And it does present kind of an interesting proposition, though. Like a person who has a stat that is really good, like a 16 in strength, and a person who has an 8 in strength, or let's say 10 because they have no modifier or something like that. If one is a prime attribute and the other one's not, like if the higher person has it not listed as a prime attribute, it's actually harder for them to succeed in strength checks.
Right.
Which is kind of
it's much harder. It's not just a little harder. It's much harder. It was just like
12 to 18. That's a huge jump.
It's 12 to 18 plus your bonus, plus your plus 2 at 16 versus the other person's -1 at 9. Like, so they have to roll. Actually, it's actually worse than that. Is they have to roll a 19. Base versus.
Well, I'm talking, but even if you flip it, that person who has the 9 strength, it's actually easier for them to succeed at something that's harder for the quote unquote mechanically stronger person to succeed at, which for me kind of throws a little bit of a loop in my brain because I'm so used to like D&D where it's just so straightforward and you're like, oh, your challenge number isn't really modified by any outside forces like that.
It feels like a way to give you a bonus for your expertise.
It's a little bit of class protection, a little bit of protection of like how you decide to design your character.
Yeah. So that's like the only thing that I thought was like a little bit weird about it is that you could have those situations where the super smart person who doesn't have a prime attribute in their role could be outdone by the headstrong rogue who does have it as their prime attribute.
I don't think you would do that. Like, why you wouldn't have a high stat that's not your prime stat unless you rolled
fantastically.
Unless you rolled fantastic and there were all 16s or something like that.
Or you were really stubborn and you were like, no, my character has to be smart. Well, but I do all my magic with my charisma,
But I could see somebody having, maybe thinking that having a high stat and that bonus is going to make up for them to maybe use their prime stat in another attribute to kind of bad luck protection them or something like that. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to play with the game to see how it feels and all that stuff. And I'm sure that different DM styles are going to require different levels of rolls.
I would say the game doesn't encourage that choice in any sense.
your highest, because you do get to at least put your stats.
You're going to
read between the lines a little bit. You're going to want to put the high numbers where you can succeed the most.
You're going to want to put the high numbers in the things that your class is good at.
And so that
I did that. I put a higher number in charisma because I was like, well, we might need to talk to people and Jeff wasn't going to talk. Jeff's character, Slovang, wasn't going to talk to people.
No,
So I
no.
put a prime attribute in charisma, and man, there were multiple times that I wish I hadn't.
Yeah. Well, it was funny too.
That's what you get for metagaming, Brent.
It's true. Yeah, I was significantly punished for trying
We
to
always get bit in the ass when we
game
try
the
to
system a
metagame.
little bit.
Well, it's funny because you were like, I'm going to play the character we need, not the character I want. And then all of a sudden you're like, fuck.
Yeah, it was because I was like, being able to look at traps would be good right about now. If I would have picked that intelligence thing instead of charisma, that would have been good.
Yeah.
You're good at
and,
unlocking things.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of talk about some of the other rules that it has is that, I mean, I think we did combat, we did a lot of the attribute checks, and we did a few of those kinds of things. So I think we got a good range of the rules that we used. We didn't really use any of the
Magic.
the spell casting or anything like that. And I think it is worth noting that the illusionist in this system is a really interesting class because it's not just like an illusion and it's all flashy lights. It's like reality warping magic, and it's kind of it's just a neat concept for an illusionist. And I think
it's different.
that was kind of at least worth mentioning. So even though we didn't get to play any of the spell casting classes, it's very reminiscent of D&D with how they feel and the spell lists and everything like that.
It's fancy too, right? It's fancy in magic where they have to memorize spells.
Don't they?
I think it is. I'm pretty sure.
I'd have to. Since we
didn't really
look
consider
at
a
them,
spellcaster, so I didn't really look.
I looked, because I did consider a wizard.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
but I'm pretty sure
my brain is like.
I'm pretty sure it's fancy in magic where they have to memorize spells and they disappear from their mind.
Yeah, I think that this how they use them. That's true. Yeah. Because they have it is true because they have to do rituals to like learn their magic every morning and everything like that. That's true. Yeah. No, I knew it was in there somewhere. Just
kind of rattle it around, right? Just a magic 8-ball.
Shake my head a little bit. So, there were some rules we didn't use, and obviously the system is very much like D&D, where you have to buy multiple books to really get a more complete picture. You can definitely play the game with the player's handbook, and I think personally you could easily just go use D&D. AD&D monsters and be fine. You would just have to like tweak it just a little bit, based on how your party reacts. So you don't need to really buy much more. But they also have the monsters and treasure book for free. I don't remember which printing it was, but there's the player's book and the monsters and treasure book you can get for free. So you can just kind of start.
Oh, nice.
I think that's cool.
I did think the goblins did seem much harder. And so much to your comment about OSR, like I think combat is not designed for the players to come heroically swinging at everything. It's designed to build caution into your approach, because even goblins had high ACs, in terms of like
they're heroic at what you do well in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was a heroic lockpicker because I had that +3 and a 12 target number.
Mm-hmm.
Anything outside of that was a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
And in order to damage those goblins, you do actually have to roll high enough to hit them.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep rolling under, and their armor class may have been 1 or 2 higher than maybe I was expecting, and that's not a complaint or anything. It's just, but I don't think that made much difference. I was rolling so low.
Well, and it's like anything,
maybe 1 or 2, but
it's like most games. Like action economy matters. If there's more, you're gonna get overwhelmed because you're not a heroic character.
Compete with 6.
Yeah, you're not a heroic character. You're gonna have a hard time.
Yeah.
With it.
Well, and it definitely, if you want to expand on combat a little bit, combat was definitely, you got one action. You could either do a full move or you could do an attack. And so since we had just played Dragonbane, I think we were fairly used to just having that really limited action pool that you could draw from. You could do a little bit of movement and still attack, so there was a little bit of flexibility there. They did offer a small list of combat maneuvers, that
worked well.
Used. Yeah, it worked really good, and I think because I used the combat maneuvers as the keeper and stuff like that, just to create openings for you and do all that kind of stuff that were deadly in so much as that they did hurt you more if they hit. But
it had rules for grappling.
It had rules for grappling that Jeff
I was much
abused
better at
horribly.
overbearing.
He was a
Yeah.
very huggy half orc.
Yeah.
Well, they give the monks that bonus to overbear and
Yeah.
grapple, so at some point you have to try it because
But it worked both times you used it. So
it did. I mean,
Mhm.
at level 1, you have to take advantage of every bonus that you get. I still don't know that I love playing fantasy games at level 1, like, unless you're going to be building up. I still think that like jumping in at level 3 for like a one shot might be better so that you have a little more variety in what you can do.
well, you just
But
have to be very clear that you're not
yeah,
heroes. Like if you're in a dungeon, you should probably sneak past stuff that you can sneak past. Don't try and fight it, because if you try and
And,
fight it, you're probably gonna die.
we
and we
tried to
did.
sneak past. We got caught.
Yeah.
It's true.
Well,
It was
well,
too
it's,
far. It was too far
well,
to sneak.
but you snuck past
A few
one.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, you snuck past a couple things. So I think that in terms of like other rules we didn't use or miss, I mean, there are definitely rules in the Keeper's Guide. I'm sure that we, since I haven't
I think
really,
magic was the biggest one that I was thinking that we
yeah,
missed. We didn't get to use that very much. We didn't roll. I think I was the only one that rolled. Oh no, I didn't even get a savings throw from the one spell in the game, did I? That just hit automatically.
no, no, you had to roll your spell resistance because that was an interesting concept, is that you have a spell resistance of 1 no matter what, right? So like even magic missile could fail if you roll like I zap you with my
Go
magic missile.
go ahead and roll your d20 and see if you hit a 1. Yeah, that's
But it's a fifth edition. They
You had
just
a chance.
smack you.
It was very little chance, but you had a chance.
Yeah. So likes, dislikes. What did you like about the system, just kind of as an overall, your playthrough and all that kind of stuff?
It was familiar without being the set. Like it didn't feel to me like Dungeons and Dragons, but it was close enough that I never felt completely lost. For it being a new system, because it's like when you learn new rules. Like my brain, at least, I'm cross circuiting to other
right.
systems, and but it was familiar enough. I don't mind like the adding the level. Where there wasn't a ton of different bonuses that you could
hmm
get, and like even the ability bonuses were a little bit less than they are in some editions of D&D.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um
So it made me kind of want to play like higher level characters, to see like at 4 or 5 where you're automatically getting plus 4 or 5 on every roll you
mhm.
make. Like things would feel a little bit different, and of course the monsters would have to be different to compensate
Mhm.
for that to a degree, right?
Yeah.
But I thought it felt familiar but not identical, which was good because I didn't want identicals, and it did. Believe
Mhm.
me, it felt deadly. I thought my character was going to die every time we got into combat.
Yeah.
Like even though I had a massive amount of hit points for the system, I had 13 hit points, which was ridiculous. I just kept getting hit.
Right. Well, yeah, like I said, when you get overwhelmed, like you'll get overwhelmed
Yeah.
Mhm.
when they have double or triple the amount of people, the
So,
amount of people you
so I
have to
didn't even
survive.
mind the OSR feel. OSR isn't always my bag.
Yeah,
I'm hit
my
or miss. I love Mothership. That's more new SR, I guess.
yeah,
I don't fully understand all of the
me
categories.
neither. And I don't think anybody else does either. I if it scratched the D&D itch for me well enough. Like it was, like Jeff said, it was familiar enough to be a D&D like, but not 100% D&D, which I liked quite a bit. So I was a pretty big fan of how simple it is, and I felt like if you wanted class diversity, you could homebrew stuff pretty easy. And you said there's other books that you can buy that have like other classes and stuff, probably, because
Yeah.
that was one of my concerns is like I've talked about this before, how I don't really like you have to play a complete party type games,
Mhm.
which I feel like this has a little bit of that, because I feel like if you have 2 rogues in the party, you're probably gonna just be 2 characters that do the same thing over and over again.
Well,
Um,
I
you
think you have a
could,
specific skill set to
yeah,
go at problems too, right?
yeah, you could, yeah, and you could vary a little bit on your prime skills and stuff like that, and maybe have diversity in how you handle stuff.
Mhm.
But there's still that, essentially, they're still going to be the same character. But I feel like you could do that by just homebrewing other characters or finding probably homebrew characters online or whatever and stuff like that. And I feel like they're all going to be pretty easy to integrate into the game. So all in all, I think it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was good in terms of just how you played the game, and like I said, it was familiar enough, and I kind of it kind of reminds me of what I said before we actually played the game. It was like I'm worried that it's familiar enough that I'm gonna use rules from other systems on accident, just because of how close it is,
And I think this would be, speaking of that, I think this would be a real easy game to Frankenstein a bit,
Mhm.
where you just take
Sure.
things from different D20 systems and just use this as like the core, and then you just take stuff from other D20 systems that you
Mhm.
like and graft it onto here.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say is I think that that's okay because I think that there's
Hmm.
a lot of stuff, because they don't even default critical hits in this, like that's not the default setting, but you could easily just do it and it would be,
Hmm.
heroic and fun and you would, still be in there. But I think it's different enough because of how they use the prime attributes and stuff like that as part of the siege engine that it's interesting and presents new challenges to how you roll a d20 and what you're good at and what you're not
Hmm.
so good at. What I still didn't necessarily like is that even though the siege engine provides different difficulties, it still doesn't. I've been really liking going towards, situations in which you roll, but you have degrees of success and failure. I really like hitting that range a little bit more. Whereas this kind of falls into the D20. Oh, did you hit the target number? No. So it's either up to me as the DM to decide if how you fail forward, if you fail forward or just fail. This is a system where you can easily, if you've only provided a locked door as the path forward for your players to go into the thing to get the whatchamacallit, and they can't open it, then then you're like,
Right.
oh, adventure over. So I mean, it could suffer from a few of those things, but not to say that you couldn't, as the GM, just kind of decide those things on the fly as well. um but it's just not baked into the system like it
Right.
is in some of the other
Sure.
systems that we've
Well, it's a
played
loose
with.
system. It's like I said, that's where the OSR feel comes from. Is that there's a lot of things that aren't said as rules, so
Mhm.
that's where the OSR part comes in. Is like it's ruling. What is a rule? Rulings, not rules. Like
Yeah.
we're not going to say, so the arbiter of the game makes the decision at the time.
Mhm.
And I think that's the part of this game that makes it feel OSR. Is it's very much, well, kind of like kind of like, well, I am a monk and I want to sneak. Well, you don't have a sneak skill, so what are you gonna do? Well, I guess it would be agility, probably. Okay, go for it. Like
Yeah, you just
that sort of ruling where it's like, oh yeah, go ahead. And it's like,
yeah.
oh well, it's a prime attribute, so do I still get the
Mhm.
bonus? Yeah, or whatever.
So you become good at sneaking. And that's the other thing is that that was the one thing I just kind of missed is that since skills seem to be more abilities based on class, like you get your like Brent as the rogue has a sneak skill, but our good friend Jeff as the monk does not. you
Right.
know and so I think that there was part of me that just slightly missed a skill list, and whenever you have like huge inventory lists and everything like that, you always kind of like, my brain just kind of subconsciously was always searching for a, well, why don't you roll a, oh, attribute check, because that's all I've got here to
Well,
work
yeah,
with.
that's what, yeah, which is what OSR does a lot. A lot of it
Mhm.
defaults to the attribute.
Yeah, so it kind of means that your characters become summarily good at everything they're good with their prime attribute and worse their
Is
secondary.
there? I would need to look again because I don't remember this, but there isn't something in the rules that if it's a prime attribute but not a skill, do you still get all the bonuses? Like, would it still be a 12? Like, so for like Jeff, your was agility one of your prime attributes?
That dexterity was.
Yeah, or
It was
dexterity.
it was it was con and dex.
Mhm.
So he would still get it at a 12, even though it wasn't directly related to a skill. Like, I thought
Yeah,
there was
because
something
it's
about that.
because like, so when you go to your classes and everything like that, like when you use hide, because you have, what was it? Hide, conceal themselves from others. So you actually have an ability that says, oh, you can do this. So rogues use this ability to conceal themselves, and it tells you how you move and everything like that, and what that means, like, and all those kind of things. But then the question becomes, is that can the monk just not hide then? Like,
Right, and
You
I guess
know?
that's what I'm saying is the class protection would be they don't get some benefit from it, like they don't
Hmm.
get their attribute bonus, or it still starts at an 18 or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
So I would say that's a I feel like that might be a problem.
Yeah.
Is then there becomes one like master stat that everybody makes a prime attribute regardless of what class they are.
Hmm. Yep. So I mean, it is so, and
Where it's
just
just
so
like, no, they don't. They're so bad at it, you can't. You don't hide. Your rogue hides. You headbutt things.
exactly, and that's where I think and that's where I think it got a little bit weird to me because, like, because it is a prime attribute, um, you still get some benefit, right? I don't know. It just was a little bit strange that there was
Because I don't
the.
think we were playing it that way. Because the when he rolled the sneak roll,
Mhm.
we were doing it. He was doing it at 18. But you need to roll over an 18.
And
And
that might
sneak
have been
was
me not
agility.
understanding if his
Um,
that a dexterity was his primary, because dexterity
Yeah,
wasn't your
I,
primary, was it?
yeah.
Constitution was my main primary because
Mhm.
that's like the regular attacks. But then, like at second level, you start being able to catch like projectiles and stuff, and that requires Dex. So Dex can be a primary modifier for a
So
monk.
Dex and Prime were your main two,
Yeah, Dex and Con.
and mine was Dex and Charisma. So
Yeah.
we actually were
So,
better. We
but
actually were better
really,
at stealthing than.
yeah. So you should have used your. Well, I mean, and it may, and I'd have to listen to the recording to see how I presented at the time, but you should have used 12 plus the difficulty number I presented in order to create your target number. Because I think if you rolled, because I
I mean,
think if you rolled
the only reason I
initially,
remember is because he rolled a 19. He rolled really well.
Yeah, I rolled really
oh,
well
He
on the sneak.
so it
So
didn't matter, but I remember that we were basing the target number off of 18. That's why I remember, because we were all
oh
shocked
well,
that he made it.
yeah, I'll have to double. Well, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't
Um,
matter. I'm just more asking for that would be a knock on the rules, is that if anybody with a high
mhm,
primary attribute now can do anything that one of the classes that's their class protected ability, like
mhm.
he can sneak as well as my rogue at that point,
Yeah,
for the
well,
most part.
and that's kind of one of the questions that I didn't really
that's
see answered, was that, like, how do you, like, your your abilities, um
And you could homebrew that, like that wouldn't be that big of a deal to
yeah, you could
homebrew.
homebrew it. It's the conundrum is D&D is a skill heavy system.
mhm.
There's so many skills in D&D, and then there's almost none in this game.
There is none. It's all
Well,
your
there's
class
they're all like
abilities.
class based,
Yeah, it's
right?
all your class abilities. Yeah.
So, you know, as a person, I can try to walk quietly,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it, and
Right.
maybe sneak is the wrong thing to call it, but I can't possibly be as good as somebody who's
Trained in it.
trained in it,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
You know,
That's what I'm
that's the
agreeing.
part that feels confusing.
That's the part that's
Yeah,
confusing. And in our
yeah.
case, because it's your prime attribute and because that's what like sneaking is based off of, is agility, you technically were as good at it as
I
somebody
mean, what
in my
was I
character.
cartwheeling? Was I doing flips and whirls, and all you could hear is a little ripple of
You were
cloth?
just running so fast that no one could hear you.
Well, and that's kind of, like I said, one of the things that I was just a little bit confused by, and I didn't, and maybe I missed it in the book as to how that's supposed to be utilized. Maybe that was in the keeper section and I just overlooked it. But that's why I was kind of like, I mean, I would say it's an attribute. It's just an agility attribute because that seems to govern
Right.
that action.
Right.
So since it's a prime attribute, you have a certain expertise in it just because of
Right.
your,
Yeah.
by
Yeah. I
nature.
mean, it makes logically based on the way that the system is built. That's how it works. I'm saying that could be a knock on it, that
Right.
like
Mhm.
like
I agree with
again,
Brent.
rogue like class protection goes out the window with that
Well,
overlap.
especially like because your class is like, it would be nice to know like
Well, I mean,
what would to do, what would you do versus, like a rogue's hide. How is that different than just a fighter's hide?
that's what I'm saying. Is technically you were Jeff. You were as good at everything. You were as good as at everything that I did. You had the same bonuses to lockpicking, the same bonus to anything that's agility based in my skill list. You did just as well as I do then, with it being your prime attribute.
Well, but maybe you could make the case that it's if it's like, because hide isn't really a technical skill. Maybe there's certain components that like you're better at hiding and like moving
Well,
and
but
stuff like
stealth
that.
is, which
But
is
like
specifically what I'm talking about.
lock picking is where I was going. Is that like you could argue that the monk doesn't know how to open a lock other than bashing it, and so
Technically, punching it wouldn't I don't think be lock picking, which is what the skill's called.
it's lock picking. It's
It's not.
picking it apart.
It's not. It's
Yeah,
breaking
Yeah,
the
I'd be
so
using con for that as a monk.
law. It's breaking the law.
I just scream at it, break, and hope for the best, I guess. So yeah, so that was like my little kind of conundrum with the game as to how those play out. I mean, since it's really the game is designed to tell the story as cool as you can. I'm sure you could make nuances as you play the
Yeah,
game as to
sure.
what you and
That's a
your
ruling
table
thing.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would feel is the better thing to it. Unless there's, like I said, unless there's something we missed. So jump on those comments, flame me as to how I totally messed up their skill system. I would appreciate it. You know,
That's not really the point that we're getting at.
Yeah,
We're
no,
getting at if
we're
we
asking for
miss
feedback,
something,
and yeah,
yeah,
if we miss something,
or
help
if
us
you've
out.
or
I
if
don't
you've
want to read the whole
homebrewed it,
book again.
or if you've homebrewed it, or if
yeah.
you've homebrewed it to do something that you like, let us know.
That's more constructive. I want their approach. Don't
Yeah.
flame me. I'm sensitive. Make it easier for me. But no, but overall, like I personally liked the game. I mean, it was such a fast game that I could easily take it to our home table. I am curious to see, the setting of Erda, which is their, Troll Lords, Castles Crusades setting, as to how that goes. And I do wonder how the game plays at higher levels, because there definitely is like a break. They give you like the 13 plus, where that's kind of the Paragon levels and stuff like that they do. So I'm sure there's some cool aspects to the game for longer campaigns that I'd really like to explore. But it was a positive experience.
Yeah,
I
I
enjoyed.
liked it. It was good.
It was good. It was a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
it did the things that I often complain about in games. It did it avoided them, like character creation seeming like just such a slog to get through just picking your general abilities.
Mhm.
The equipment kind of sucks, but with a little work you could probably figure that out.
So technically, we also didn't get into the encumbrance stuff really deep, because I didn't want you
I
guys to
did
hate
check the
me.
encumbrance though, like when
You,
I was getting my stuff, so I made sure that
yep, it came up.
I was aware of it.
We
Yeah.
were made aware of it at the beginning of the game that we shouldn't have more than our encumbrance.
And we weren't doing Fallout style looting inside the dwarven thing where
We're just taking
this
everything.
toaster will come in handy later.
Oh, is this a loose rock? Is it a rock or is it a pebble? I can take 10 pebbles and be fine. Yeah, no. So that being said, thanks again for recommending the game. If you want to converse with us outside of YouTube, Jeff, how do they do that?
They find us on social media. We are at Rollwise, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter. I may have forgotten one,
I think you hit them all.
but I think most things at Rollwise. Or you can email us rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
As always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to us ramble about Castle and Crusades. We do appreciate you and any conversation about Castle and Crusades. And as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there.
Thank you.
See everybody.